Knowing which color is opposite to which one is very helpful. Like blue is opposite to green, red is opposite to orange, and white is opposite to yellow. Welcome to the 3x3 beginners tutorial. In this video I'll teach you how to easily solve any scramble on a 3x3 Rubik's Cube in less than 20 minutes. If you want to skip ahead to any step, the timestamps will be given in the description. Very first step to solve a 3x3 Rubik's Cube is making a cross on any one side, preferably white to begin with, and here's how it looks after the step is over. There's a cross made on white with all the other adjacent color edges matched. As you can see, blue with blue, red with red, green with green, and orange with orange. When you make a cross, you should make sure that the colors joined to the edges of the cross match with their centers. For example, you cannot match the blue edge with the green center or with the orange center. It has to be with the blue center. And I know it's pretty hard to get a perfect cross on your first try. You will need to try it quite a few times. But once you perfect it, it will be very useful. And here are a few tips that will help you with your cross even after you mess up. If the colors are disoriented with opposite colors, for example blue and green or red and orange, then you simply do M2, U2, M2, and now it's solved. It's again all oriented. But if it's disoriented with adjacent colors, for example blue and red, then you simply do R prime, D, R, D prime, R prime for the right side, and L, D prime, L prime, D, L for the left side. Now let's try a sample cross with all these steps. First we start by matching all the edges like this. This one is here and done. All the edges are now matched, but are they oriented? You can see that blue and orange are not oriented. And as we learned previously, if the colors are disoriented with adjacent edges, you should do and now it's all oriented. And now you can see that our sample cross looks like the one on the right. Now, after you have finished your cross properly, we now move on to the first layer. And here's how the cube will look after the first layer is over. Full white will be solved and there will be a T made on every adjacent color. So now we should match the white corners, and for doing that first we need to get the corner that we want to orient at the bottom, and many times the corner that you want to orient is at the top. For that you simply bring that side down, move the corner to a safe place and solve the cross again. Now you can see that it's at the bottom. Now you will need to insert these corners into their slots. And you should also see that you're inserting the corners into their correct slots, like green and orange to green and orange, and not to blue and orange. And there are only 3 cases for this. To make this simpler, always make sure to put the corner you're orienting towards the right side of the cube, like this. The first case is when the white part faces towards you. For this, you need to move the white part away, get the cross down, bring the white part back and solve the cross. Now you can see that these edges are now oriented properly with this corner. Now the second case is when the corner faces away from you. This is actually easier than the previous one. It's R prime, D prime, R. Now you can see that the corner is oriented properly. The third and final case is when the white part is below you. For this you need to do R prime, D2, R, D, R prime, D prime, R. Now you can see that the corner is oriented. And if you follow all these steps correctly, your cube should look like this. You can see that So now let's do a sample solve until whatever we learned in this video. So let's start by doing the cross. As you can see, all the edges are already oriented. So now let's start with the first layer. You can see that the green and red corner is there, which is already there in its slot. So for this one, the case was D prime, R prime, D, R prime, R. and now this edge is oriented. The second one is blue and orange, is also in its perfect slot, and this one was R prime, D prime, R. Then this one is facing downwards, so the case is R prime, D2, R, D prime, R prime, D prime, R. Now all the edges are oriented and we are done with first layer. The next step is the second layer. After this step is done, the cube should look like the one on the right. All the adjacent edges of blue, green, orange and red must be solved. To do this, first we need to get the edge that we want to solve to match with its center. So you get that edge to the bottom row of the blue center so that it matches with its color. Now you need to look at the color of the other edge piece. If that color is on the right of this first color, like as you can see with blue and orange, you do D prime, R prime, D, R, D, F, D prime, F prime. And now you can see that the edge has been matched properly and a layer is being formed. And if it is on the left side like blue and red, then you do D, L, D prime, L prime, D prime, F prime, D, F. And now you see that the blue and red is also matched properly and a layer has been formed. Also make sure that you don't match it with the wrong side. For example, if you do the algorithm for the right side when the color is to the left, then it will get spoiled and a lot of time will be wasted. So make sure you match the edges properly and solve the second layer. Now let's do a sample solve until second layer. First of all, we'll start by doing the cross. Then we'll see if all the edges are oriented, and yes, they are. So now let's start with the first layer. That's done. The second corner is also done. The third corner is also done. And the fourth one is also done. Now let's start with second layer. We see a green and red edge matched here, which is already there with its green center, and red is to its right. So we need to do D prime, R prime, D, R, D, F, D prime, F prime. And now we see that the first edge is done. Now moving on to the second edge. The second edge is orange and blue. So first let's match it with its center. And now let's see, blue is to its left. So for this we do D, L, D prime, L prime, D prime, F prime, D, F. This one is also done. Now the next one is green and orange. First let's match it with its center. And then orange is to its left. So we again do D, L, D prime, L prime, D prime, F prime, D, F. Most of it is done, and now the last pair, blue and red, which is already matched with its center and red is to its left. So we again do D, L, D prime, L prime, D prime, F prime, D, F. And now full second layer is complete. The next and final step is solving the third layer. The first part of solving the last layer is solving yellow, the color opposite to white. And to solve yellow, first we should make a cross on yellow. For that there are a few cases that I'll be showing you right now. When there are no yellow edges solved for the yellow cross except the center, this is what you do. F, R, U, R prime, U prime, F prime. Small f, R, U, R prime, U prime, small f prime. And now you see that the cross is made along with a few edges that are already solved. When two edges of the yellow cross are solved and they form a bar, you do this algorithm from any of the other two rows that are not solved so that the bar is facing towards you horizontally. F, R, U, R prime, U prime, F prime. And you see again that the cross is made. When two edges of the yellow cross are solved and they form a small R, you should make the cube face in such a way that you can see that it's a small R and not an L. And after doing that, you should do small f, R, U, R prime, U prime, small f prime. And again the cross is solved. These are pretty much all the cases for getting the yellow cross. And now we'll be solving yellow. There are a few more cases for solving yellow. And an important thing that you need to know for solving this step and the next one is called a headlight. When only on one layer both the corners are solved but the edge is not, it's called a headlight, like this. This is a yellow headlight. Now moving back to the first case. If only the cross is made and there are yellow headlights on any two sides adjacent to yellow, then you face any one of those headlights and do F R U R prime U prime R U R prime U prime R U R prime U prime F prime, and yellow must be solved. When only the yellow cross is solved, but this time only one headlight is there, face the side to the right of the headlight, which must have one yellow corner on the right side. Then do this: small f R U R prime U prime, small f prime, F R U R prime U prime F prime, and yellow must be solved. After solving the yellow cross, if you see that a fish is formed on yellow, now you need to look at the face of the fish here and its two adjacent sides. There will be only one yellow corner in both those adjacent sides, that's here. If it's on the right side, then face that side and do R U R prime U R U to R prime. If again a fish is formed like the previous case, but this time the yellow corner is on the left side, then do L prime U prime L U prime L prime U to L, and yellow is solved again. When on yellow you can see a fish being formed on both the sides like this, is called a double fish case. You face the face of the fish from where you can see the other two corners, and then you do R prime F R B prime R prime F prime R B, and yellow is solved. You can identify this case by seeing that there is a hammer being formed over here like this, and if a headlight is formed adjacent to the handle of the hammer, then you face the headlight into R2D R prime U2 R D prime R prime U2 R prime. There will be a hammer formed on this case like the previous one, but this time the headlight is not formed. Face the side where the yellow edge is on the left of you, and then do small r U R prime U prime, small r prime F R F prime, and yellow is solved. These are all the cases that can come after you solve the yellow cross. Now the last step after you solve yellow is solving the rest of the cube, and you all know it look like this after it's done. And as you're a beginner, it doesn't matter what case comes at the starting, just do R U2 R prime U prime R U2 L prime U R prime U prime L. After you do this, you must get any one of these 5 cases. The first case is when all 4 headlights with opposite colors as their edges come after you do the previous algorithm. If this comes, face any side except white and yellow and do M2U, M2, U2, M2, U, M2. The second case is when again all 4 headlights are there, but this time the edges are not opposite, they are adjacent colors. For this, face the side where the edge is to the right side, like here in green and orange. The orange edge matches with orange, and orange is to the right of green. So face green and do M2U, M2U, M prime U2, M2 U2, M prime U2, and the cube will be solved. In this case, you will see that except white and yellow, one more color is solved and all the other 3 colors are headlights. And only one of them have opposite edges in them, the rest don't. And that opposite colored headlight is adjacent to the solved color. And if the headlight is to the left of the solved color, face the solved color and do M2U, M prime U2, M U, M2, and the cube will be solved. This case is very similar to the previous one, but only this time the adjacent color is to the right of the solved color. And when you see this, you do M2 U prime, M prime U prime, U2, M U prime M2, and the cube is solved. The fifth and final case is if you get this with one color solved and one side with 2 matched colors not of the center, and another side with 2 matched colors of the center. Then face the side which is not of the center and do the algorithm that you did previously to get these cases. R U2 R prime U prime R U2 L prime U R prime U prime L, and the cube will be solved. These are all the 5 cases that can come. If you don't get any of these cases after doing the algorithm, that means the cube has to be solved. Now let's do a sample solve. So as always, we'll start by doing the cross. And after the cross is done, we'll check if all the edges are oriented or not. Here we can see that 2 edges are oriented and 2 are not from opposite colors. And if you remember, the case was M2, U2, M2. And now all the edges are oriented and we can move towards first layer. This is the first edge for the first layer. The blue and orange one is the second. And see, if you match it like this, which is wrong. Like here I matched blue and orange with orange and green. That is not correct. So you remove it like that and match it with the blue and orange. Then comes the red and green, which goes here. And last but not the least, orange and green. Now first layer is over, let's move on to second layer. First case we see is red and green. Red is already matched with the center and green is towards the left. So we do D, L, D prime, L prime, D prime, F prime, D, F, and it's done. The second one is orange and blue. Orange is already matched and blue is towards the left again. So we do D, L, D prime, L prime, D prime, F prime, D, F, and it's done. The third one is red and blue is towards the right side. So we do D prime, R prime, D, R, D, F, D prime, F prime. The last case is orange and green, and orange and green is already in its corresponding edge, but it's opposite. So we do the case again to get it out of the slot. And now we see it's here, we match it with the center, green is to the right, so we do D prime, R prime, D, R, D, F, D prime, F prime. And second layer is over. Now I move on to the third layer. We see a small r, so we do small f, r, u, r prime, u prime, small f prime. The cross is formed and we see a fish being formed. Now adjacent to the head, the yellow corner is on the right side. So we do r, u, r prime, u, r, u2, r prime. And yellow is solved. After this, we already get a case that we know, so we don't need to do the algorithm that was given. With 3 colors solved, and the opposite colored headlight is to the left of the color. So if you remember, we should do M2, U, M prime, U2, M, U, M2. And the cube is solved. If this video hits 30 likes, I'll be doing another video on the advanced method of the 3x3. It'll at least improve your times by 8 to 9 seconds. So if you learned anything new or enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and also subscribe to the channel.